Dr. King, meanwhile, together with 4 close aides, had moved his personal campaign to America's oldest city, St. Augustine in Florida. The town was a stronghold of the Ku Klux Klan. Many of its members had been sworn in as special deputies by the sheriff, an outspoken segregationist. For King, that made it a perfect place from which to keep the struggle on the nation's television screens and ratchet up pressure on Washington.
Martin King, as a leader, as a person, was fearless. To say that he was fearless is not to say that he was unafraid. The Martin King that I knew and observed had a fear that any day, any time, he could be killed. And I sometimes, as I've thought back over the years, how does one live like that? How does one live like that?
Unknown to King, a squad of FBI men had followed him from Atlanta. On arrival, they telexed Washington for permission to plant the usual devices in a cottage King had rented in the white segregated part of the town. When King demanded the desegregation of beaches and swimming pools, hotels and lunch counters, local whites denounced him as an outside nigger and a communist. When he received death threats, he went to a local church and announced that he would stay in the town.
We have gone too far now to turn back, and we will not be content until the sagging walls of segregation have been crushed all over this community by the battering rams of the forces of justice.
King knew his presence in St. Augustine would attract the media, national as well as local. Cameras were there to catch local whites beating black kids trying to swim from the beaches. The networks were there when pickets tried to anticipate the passage of the new Civil Rights Bill by attempting to integrate a local restaurant. When the media reported that somebody had opened fire on King's rented cottage, he was away for the day, the president was forced to take action. But King was not a man to pass up a chance to prod President Johnson. Messages demanding federal intervention poured into Washington. As King well knew, direct federal intervention was not a step Johnson would likely take. And as Johnson knew, King was being deliberately provocative.
Take your hand off. Treat me like a human being. We're all private property.
With reporters in attendance, King now led a group of activists to an all-white motel, the Monson Motor Lodge. Fighting broke out when 5 young blacks and 2 whites dived into the segregated swimming pool. The manager counterattacked with plastic jugs of an acid cleaner.
King ain't got me yet, fellas. This business of King and his nonviolent army is the biggest joke I've heard of. He's not broke the spirit of this community. We just getting right here right now. So you can tell the people that.
Altogether, 34 demonstrators were arrested, including Dr. King. He was charged with violating Florida's unwelcome guest laws and spent 3 days in jail. On the 4th day, he left for Yale University to receive an honorary degree. Next day, June 19th, was another bad day for Hoover, but a triumph for Johnson and also for King. In the Senate, after 6 months of obstruction, the Southern conservative bloc had been voted down. It was the last obstacle blocking a new Civil Rights Act. What Johnson had been watching on television was the white backlash in St. Augustine.
All of the forces of hell, all of the black mobs, King and his black revolutionaries, the entire communist conspiracy is concentrating on St. Augustine. Right. I don't think that the Civil Rights Bill settles anything. All that the Civil Rights Bill does is to start a race war in the United States.
On July 2nd, the 1964 Civil Rights Bill outlawing institutionalized segregation was approved by the Congress and signed into law in the East Room of the White House. Dr. King, now the undisputed leader of black Americans, was placed close to the president's chair.